Hello, thank you for visiting this training video hosted by Gainwell Technologies. Today, I'm going to show you how to enroll a new facility in the Provider Management module for Vermont Medicaid. Before we begin, please note that this video is intended for informational purposes only and does not guarantee approval of your enrollment in Vermont Medicaid. If you have questions regarding Vermont Medicaid's enrollment criteria, please contact the Provider Services Help Desk at 802 878 7871 or email us at vtproviderenrollment@dxc.com. For today's training, I'm going to start on the homepage of the Provider Management module. You can access the link to the module by visiting www.vtmedicaid.com and click on the Enrollment tab. To begin a new enrollment, I'm first going to click on the menu button that's located on the top left-hand side of the screen. Under that, I'm going to hover over Provider Enrollment and I'm going to select New Enrollment. The first thing you're going to see is our welcome page. This page is designed to provide you with some more information on what you may need in order to complete your application. There is an enrollment pre-checklist. It's not a required step, but if you would like to get some more information specialized with your enrollment type, provider type, or specialty, you can enter in that information and generate that pre-checklist to get more detailed information. Once you are ready, you can hit the Start button to continue. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to register this application. Every application that you complete in the Provider Management module must be registered in order to obtain a unique application tracking number, or an ATN. This application tracking number, along with the password that you use to register your application, will be used in order to resume your application if you have to leave and come back to it, or to check your enrollment status once you have submitted the application. There is also a field for entering a provider reference. This is not a required field. However, if you wanted to enter in a reference to be able to see on each page of the application which application you are working on for what provider, it is a handy tool if you're doing multiple applications. Once you've entered in your email and your password, you can click the Register button. This has now launched us into a brand new application. You'll notice there is a blue box that generates with your application tracking number, and it also has sent an email to the address that you used to register with that application tracking number. So you don't necessarily need to make sure to write it down. It will be in your email and it will follow you throughout the application. A couple things to note before we get started. At the top of the page is your application tracking number, along with the provider reference if you entered one. You'll see it noted here under the tracking number. So this will be at the top of every single page of this application. If you didn't enter a provider reference, it will just be blank here. If you need help on a specific page of the application that you're working on, there is page level help, and it's indicated here with a blue question mark. If you click on that blue question mark, it will provide more help on the specific page that you are working on. There is also field level help. So if you are struggling with a specific field and want some more information on how to complete that field, if you hover over the gray question mark directly above the field, it will bring up a bubble and will give you some more information about that specific field. So to begin, we're going to first select our enrollment type, and we're going to do so by choosing from the drop-down list. And as noted, today we are doing a facility application. Now you'll notice that once I chose facility, a couple different things have happened here. There is a bunch of pages that have populated behind me, and it's giving me a blue warning box letting me know that once I save this first page of the application and move on to the second, I'm not going to be able to come back and change my enrollment type. That's going to hold true for the provider type as well. And the reason for that is you'll notice that because I chose a facility, everything that was populated within this application is designed to cater to facility and the provider type I chose so that you don't have to weed through unnecessary information. So that's why once you save this first page, you can't come back and change it. If later on in the application you realized that one of these pieces of information was incorrect, you would need to abandon the application and start over. So I'm just going to click OK to continue. Next, I need to select my provider type. So again, I'm going to choose from the drop-down list, and I'm just going to select the provider type. And today I'm going to be a DME supplier. I'm going to get that blue warning box again, letting me know that once I move on from this first page, I'm not going to be able to come back and change it. I also got a warning included in here regarding the fact that I chose a high-risk provider type. Because I chose DME supplier, which is a high-risk provider type, there are additional screening requirements that are going to be needed for this application, and I will show you that later on. If you chose a provider type that is limited risk, you're not going to see this kind of warning. So that's okay. I just wanted to note the difference that you may not see this warning if you chose limited risk, and you also may not have some of the tabs that I have because you're limited risk versus a high risk provider type. And then next I need to choose our effective date, and I can select an effective date up to 1 year in the past or up to 90 days in the future. And as we go through this application, you'll notice that there are blue asterisks on fields, and that's indicating that that field is required. So you have to fill out every required field before you would be able to move on to the next page. So next I am going to enter in the legal name of my facility. If you have a tax name or a DBA, you can enter that here, but it's not required. You are required to enter in a 10-digit valid NPI. So the system is intuitive to recognize that the NPI has to be 10 digits and its validity. So just make sure that you're keying in your NPI correctly. Under that, I do need to enter in my tax ID number. And then there's going to be a series of 4 questions directly under that. The first is, are you currently enrolled as a provider? If I choose yes here, I'm going to get a red warning box asking me if I'm actually here to revalidate. The system is recognizing if you're currently enrolled as a provider, why are you, selecting a new enrollment? If you are actually here to revalidate and you were to choose yes, the system would bring you out of this application to the home page in order to start the revalidation process, which is different than what we have started here today. There are a couple different reasons why a provider would need to do a new enrollment if they're already enrolled as a provider, such as adding a service location to their existing record. So I could choose no here and still maintain an answer of yes. I would just need to make sure to the right here to enter in my current Medicaid provider ID in order to continue. I'm going to change this back to no. We're going to be a new facility today. Directly under that, we're going to ask if you were previously enrolled as a provider. If I choose yes, a box is going to populate to the right, and you will need to give us the identifier for when you were actively enrolled with Vermont Medicaid before. We're going to ask you if you are Medicare enrolled. I'm going to choose yes here. You'll notice that nothing populates to the right for me to fill out, but because I chose yes later on in the application, I will be required to enter in that Medicare information. And then lastly, we're going to ask you if you're registered with CAQH. If you answer yes here, you will be required to provide your CAQH provider ID to the right. Next, we need to fill out contact information for this application. There's going to be a couple different places throughout the application we're going to ask you for contact information, and each one serves a different purpose. This contact information on the very first page is for the application itself. So if we need to send a notification or if we need to get a hold of somebody regarding this specific application, who do we contact? So I've entered in my name as well as my address information, and I'm going to tab through the zip code, and you'll notice that the address goes through the USPS software to validate. So it came up in a new window with a suggested change for me. It looks like it added the last 4 digits to my zip code there. So I'm going to accept those changes by simply clicking on the line item itself. If for some reason you did not want to accept these suggested changes, you can X out of this window and it will keep the information that you have already entered in. Next, I need to select a phone type and enter in that phone number. If you have an extension or a fax number, you can enter it here. Now you'll notice right under there we're asking for an email address, but it is not required. But directly below that field is a field for preferred communication. And if you drop the box down, you have the choice of either email or mail. I'm going to highly recommend that you choose email in this case. And the reason for that is obviously you're going to get information and notifications much quicker via email than you would with mail. And sometimes if we have to return an application for a specific reason or we need more information, there is a time limit on that getting that information to us before your application expires. And if you do choose mail, we need to print out the notification. It has to go through the mail to you, and then you have to supply the information back to us. Whereas via email, you're going to get that notification right away. So, again, I just recommend that you do choose email if you are able to. And you'll notice that because I chose email, now I have an asterisk on the email address, so I will need to provide that in order to continue. So we've now made it to the end of this first page and I'm ready to hit save and continue. However, before I do that, I just want to come back up to the top of the page just to reiterate that the enrollment type and the provider type you cannot change once you have saved and continued on to the next page. So you just want to make sure that those two pieces of information are correct and they are what you want them to be, because now would be the time to change it if something is not right. So once you've verified that information, you are all set to hit save and continue to move on to page 2. The second page of the application is the specialties page. And before we move on to enter a specialty, I do want to just note that you have this progress bar at the top of the application. It lets you know where you are throughout the application. Any page you're currently working on is indicated in yellow. Any page you haven't filled out yet is blue. And then any page that you have completed and can go back to is indicated here in white with a hyperlink for you to click on to go back to the page. So we need to enter in at least one specialty to go coincide with our provider type. You'll see my provider type listed here. So what we're going to do first is we're going to hit create new within this field in order to bring up a new window in order to enter in that specialty. You'll notice that we do have a checkbox here to have one specialty indicated as our primary, and you do have to indicate at least one as primary, or I should say only one as primary. So if you are entering only one specialty, you want to make sure to check the box and then enter the specialty. If you're entering multiple specialties, make sure to indicate one of those as a primary specialty. Directly under that, I'm going to drop the box down here under specialty, and you'll notice that I only have two options to select for specialty. And my options may be different than your options that you're looking at. And the reason for that is because you're only going to see specialties that are allowed with the provider type that you chose. That's why it's so important to make sure you make the right selection right off the bat, because if you're looking at this and you are not seeing your specialty, chances are you chose the wrong provider type. So just make sure to make sure that provider type is correct before you move on. So I am going to choose my specialty for today. And then right next to that, I need to select a taxonomy. So I'm going to drop the box down again, and I'm only going to be seeing taxonomies that are allowed with the specialty that I chose. So for today, I'm just going to scroll down to DME supplies. And then lastly on this window, I need to put in an effective date for my specialty. I do want to make a note here that if you have requested on the first page that your enrollment begin in the past, so maybe you entered an enrollment date for 6 months in the past, you want to make sure that your specialty effective date spans at least that far back, because you could run into claims processing issues if you have a specialty that starts today, but a claim that has a data service 4 months ago that you're trying to submit. So just rule of thumb, just make sure that your effective date of your specialty includes whatever date that you are requesting for your enrollment to begin. Once you're ready, you can hit save. And now you'll see that I have a primary specialty listed here, and that has satisfied this requirement. If you have multiple specialties, you're just going to repeat that process. So you're going to hit create new again. It's going to bring you up a blank window, and you can enter in your next specialty. If you have multiple taxonomies to report against a single specialty, you're going to report them in the additional taxonomies field below. I cannot repeat a specialty at the top under the specialties field. So I couldn't hit create new, add another 054 with a different taxonomy. It's not going to let me do that. So if I have another taxonomy related to 054, I want to report that taxonomy down below. So same idea is going to happen down here as we did at the top under specialties. I'm going to hit create new. That's going to bring me up a new window, and I'm going to select from the drop down to report my additional taxonomy. Once you've entered in all applicable specialties and taxonomies, you can hit save to continue. The next page of our application is the service location page, and this is where you are going to give us more information regarding your specific service locations. Now, since we are a high risk provider that I am showing you for today, I will only be able to enter in one service location. The same is going to hold true for a moderate provider type, only one service location per application. So if I had multiple service locations, I would need to have multiple applications. That is not the same for a limited risk provider. So if you're filling out a facility today that is a limited risk provider type, you will have the option to add multiple service locations, if applicable to you, onto a single application. So to report my service location, I'm first going to hit the Create New button on the field, and that's going to bring me up a new window with a blank service location form. And just like our specialties, we do have to indicate a primary service location. And since I'm a high risk provider type, I can only enter one service location. I have to make this one my primary. Under that, we have to enter in a billing name. And I do want to note here that your billing name here needs to be exactly how you are going to be submitting the name on your claim forms to Vermont Medicaid. Those two have to match. So you just want to make sure that you're entering that billing name as we're going to see it on your claim form. Under that, we need contact information for the service location. So the contact information that we already entered on the first page was for the application itself. This is contact information for the service location. So it may be the same, but it may be different. It just depends on your situation. So I'm going to enter in all of the fields through the country. And then once I do that, it's going to go through that USPS software to validate my address. I'm going to accept the changes by clicking on the line item. Directly below that is a place where you can enter in an email address for the service location. And again, I highly recommend that you do so, even though it's not required. You're going to get notifications much quicker via email than you will through mail. You will be required to provide at least one phone number. So we're going to do so by hitting Create New within the phone number field. And that's going to bring me up a new window in order to enter in my phone number. So I have to select my phone type, choosing from the drop-down list, and enter in the associated phone number. You can enter an extension if it's applicable to you, but it is not required. And you can repeat this process as many times as you have phone numbers. So if you've got a fax number, maybe a mobile number that you want to add in here as well, just hit Create New again and just add as many phone numbers as you have. Below that, we are going to ask you for your hours of operation. This is required. So you're going to select the box and make a check mark in the hours of operation, which opens up a new window for you to enter in that information. You're going to do so by hitting Create New. That's going to bring up another window. And here you have a few different options in order to report your hours to us. So if you are open the same hours every single day, you can choose every day and then put in the hours. If you are open the same hours on weekdays, you have the option to do weekdays and enter those hours. Same with weekends. If you are open different hours every single day of the week, you have the option to select specific days and enter in those hours as well. So it just is whatever works for you and your facility. I'm going to say that we are open on weekdays, and we are going to be open from, let's do 6 o'clock in the morning, and we'll be open until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I'm going to hit save. and now I have an entry there. But if you have additional hours, so maybe I have weekend hours too, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit create new. It's going to open up another blank form for me to be able to complete. And this time I'm just going to choose weekends. And on the weekends, we've got shorter hours. We're not open so much on the weekends. So we're going to say we're open on noon to 5 o'clock. And you just scroll down till you find your number. And so now I've reported all of the times that my facility is open. Under that, we're going to ask you if your service location is ADA compliant, if the service location is accessible by public transportation, and what are your after hours arrangements? What do you do if a patient calls and you're not available? What do you instruct them to do? Once you've entered in all of the necessary information, you can hit save. And now you're going to notice that I have satisfied the requirement indicating a primary service location on my application. Again, because I'm a high-risk provider type today, I cannot hit create new again. My create new button is now grayed out, not allowing me to. If you are doing an application today with a limited risk provider, you will have the option to hit create new again and enter another service location if you have one. If you don't, that's fine too, and you can simply move on. So we've entered in our information. I'm going to go ahead and hit save to continue. The next page of our application is the addresses page. This is where you're going to give us information for your pay to address and your mail to address. So the first address is our pay to, and you have a couple different options here. It does allow you to copy the information from your service location, your primary service location, if that information is the same. So if the contact information is the same for both, you have the option to check the box same as service location. And what that's going to do is it's going to copy over all of that information so that you don't need to type it in again. So I'm going to go ahead and select that for today. And then, of course, if the information was not the same, you would simply just fill out all of the information. And that's going to be the same for the email address and phone number for the pay to. Is it the same as the service location? If it is, you can check the box and it will copy over. But if it's not the same, all you have to do is fill out the information with what the contact information is for your pay to address. Directly below that, you are required to enter a mail to address, and you're going to have the same options where you can copy the information from your service location if it's the same. If you entered a different pay to than your service location, you could copy your pay to address as well if those happen to be the same. Or if none of it's the same, you can fill out the information with a brand new address and contact name. I am going to copy it over from my service location again. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the email and phone number information. I'm going to copy that from my service location. I do want to note here that there is a preferred communication question on the mail to, and it is defaulting to mail. So again, every time this comes up, you're going to hear me say that I recommend you choose email in order to get notifications and information much quicker. So just make note that it does default to mail and you will have to switch it over to email. You do have the option to enter in contact information for prior authorization, remittance, legal, or medical records request. It is not required, which is why it is not asterisk here. However, if you do have specific contact information and addresses you want these things to go to, you have the option to give us the information. You can simply click the plus sign on the line item, and that's going to open it up for you in order to be able to fill out the information. I do want to also note that you cannot only partially complete these fields. So although it's not asterisk, you can't fill out, maybe just the name and leave the address blank. Once you start filling it out, you've got to fill it out completely. Otherwise, the system is not going to let you save and move on to the next page. Once you have filled out all applicable information, you can hit save to continue. The next page of our application is regarding your organization, and you will need to provide the organization type and tax classification on this page. So to begin, I'm going to select from the drop-down box under Organization Type, and then below that I am going to select my tax classification from the drop-down. If any of the following apply to you, you're going to want to check the box next to the applicable field. So I'm choosing Register with Secretary of State and Incorporated today. There is some more information here regarding what you are seeing. There's a hyperlink to an email or a hyperlink to a URL if you want to get some more information. But you do want to check the box if it does apply to you. And if you are registered with the Secretary of State or Incorporated, you will need to provide a date in the box to the right of each field. Once you have filled out all of the information here, you can hit Save to continue. The next page we need to complete is the credentials page. And the first field you're going to see is license. Because we are a facility, we don't hold a license. That is not a required field. Directly below that is a panel for Medicare participation, and because I chose earlier on in the application that we are Medicare enrolled, I will need to fill out this information. So to do so, I'm going to hit Create New within the Medicare participation field. That's going to bring me up a new window in order to enter in that Medicare information. I do want to be considered for Medicare crossover claims, so I'm going to check the box. I'll need to enter in my Medicare number and select my Medicare type from the drop-down box. Now, I am Medicare Part A and B enrolled, so I will need to do these one at a time. So first I'm going to start with Medicare Part A, and I'll need to enter in the effective date and end dates of that participation. I'm going to hit Save, and that will put in my entry for my Medicare Part A. I'm going to repeat that process in order to report my Medicare Part B participation as well. So same idea, I want to check the box for Medicare crossover claims, enter in my Medicare number. This time I'm going to select Medicare Part B and then enter in the dates of that participation. I will hit Save, and now I have them both reported. Directly under that, we're going to ask you if you are enrolled in any other state Medicaid programs. If you choose yes, a box is going to open up and you will be required to give us the information for the other state Medicaid program that you are enrolled in. You'll need to give us the program, the state, and the effective and end date. If you are not, you can choose no, and you are all set for this page. When you've entered in all of the necessary information, you can hit Save to continue. The next page of our application is provider type, and you may see different information dependent upon the provider type that you chose. Remembering that the enrollment type and the provider type drive the whole application, under this particular panel, you're going to see information relating to your specific provider type. So it's okay if you don't see the same fields that I see. I'm seeing the DME information because I'm a DME provider type. So if you are a DME provider type, you will be required to give us either a Medicaid surety bond number or a Medicare, or both if you have them. If you are not DME and you are not seeing this information, you're just going to answer the questions that are appropriate for your provider type that was chosen. Once you've entered in all necessary information on the provider type screen, you can hit Save to continue. We're now on to the other page of the application, and the first field we need to complete is languages. So I'm going to hit Create New within the language field, and I'm just going to report whatever languages are spoken at my service locations. So I'm going to choose English first, and then we also speak French at my service location. So I'm just going to repeat the process, hit Create New again, and this time I'm going to choose French. And you can repeat that process as many times as you have languages to report. If you hold any certifications, you can enter them here. However, it is not required. You will be required, if you do have a certification, to enter in the specialty that it applies to, the certificate type, certificate number, and effective and end dates. If you have a website that you would like to have listed on the provider directory in order for patients to be able to go to, you can enter that website here. Just make sure that it starts with HTTP or HTTPS in order for it to be a valid URL. You will be required to enter in malpractice information. So I'm going to hit Create New within the malpractice field. And when the window pops up here, I'm first going to start by entering in my type of carrier, choosing from the drop-down list. I need to enter in the name of the carrier, the policy number, the aggregate, and the per occurrence amount. Now you'll notice that I didn't enter any dollar signs or decimals or periods into those amounts, and that's because the module does not accept special characters, so you want to stick to digits only. And I need to enter in my effective and my end date of that policy. Again, I do want to note that if you have chosen an effective date for your enrollment on the first page that was in the past, and maybe you have an updated face sheet for your insurance, you want to just make sure that you have covered that entire period. And that may mean that you have to enter in two insurance face sheets here with the information to cover it. But if you do, just make sure that you do that to cover yourself. And then you can hit save. Directly under that, we're going to ask you if within the last 10 years you've been involved in a malpractice suit or claim. If you choose yes here, another window is going to open up and you will be required to give us the patient name, policy number, and the status in that case or claim. If your answer is no, you've answered the last question under this page and you can hit save to continue. Next, we are going to enter any EFT information. You'll notice here that when you enter to the page, the only question that is here is whether or not you wish to enroll for electronic funds transfer. If your answer is no, which it defaults to, then you can hit save and continue. That means that you are not wanting to get direct deposit, that you are wanting to receive a paper check from Vermont Medicaid. But if your answer is yes, that you do want direct deposit, it's going to open up some more information and you will be required to enter in your financial information for that electronic funds transfer. What we're going to see here is a lot of information that has been pulled from earlier on in the application, including the provider information, as well as your tax information, your tax ID, your NPI, provider type, and taxonomy. There are 4 fields here that aren't required, that are not expanded, and that's contact information, agent information, federal agency, and retail pharmacy. If you have information that you would like to enter in any of those fields, you can simply hit the plus sign on the field and it will expand it and you can enter in the information. But again, these are not required, which is why they are not expanded. You will be required to enter in financial institution information. So I'm going to start by entering in the financial institution name. We do not require that you enter in the address, but you can if you choose to. Under that, you will need to tell us whether this is a checking or a savings account. Give us the account number and the routing number. Next, we're going to ask you if you want this account linked to which provider ID, either your tax ID or your MPI. You can toggle through both of those. And then lastly is the submission section, and you will need to use the drop down to tell us if you're going to send in a voided check or a bank letter. One of them is required. And we need an electronic signature of whoever has authority to sign for financial information. And then we need to put in our effective date that we want this EFT to begin. Once you've entered in all of the necessary information, you can hit save to continue. Next, we are going to fill out the disclosure page of the application. And this is where you are going to self-disclose against the MPI that you are submitting the application for, as well as the any disclosing entities that you have at your facility. So it's really important that you read over the Privacy Act notice statement, as well as ownership control interest and disclosure forms. At the bottom here, you'll notice that there are 5 disclosure forms that we need to action in order to be able to continue. All of the statuses are new at the moment, and we need them all to say complete in order to be able to save this page. So I'm going to start with our provider self-disclosure. In order for me to fill it out, I'm going to hit the Create New button associated to the line item that I wish to open up. When your new provider self-disclosure form pulls up, you'll see that your legal name is listed at the top as well as your tax ID. Under that will be a series of questions you will need to answer. They are all defaulted to yes, so it's very important that you read them over carefully in order to fill it out correctly. You'll notice also that there is a box below the yes answer, and that's because if you do answer yes to one of these questions, you are going to be required to fill out information as to why you answered yes. As I go through these, I'll have you go through them as well to answer each question. About halfway down the page, you're going to notice that we're going to ask you for some more contact information. And this contact information first is for auditing purposes. So in the event of an audit, who do you want us to contact? We'll need the name and the address of that individual. And I'll tab through that zip code, let it go through the USPS software again. And I'll accept the changes by clicking on the line item. And then we also need that individual's phone number and phone type. Directly below that, you will need to provide another address of the physical location of where your records are kept. And you'll notice there is a little disclaimer here that you cannot use a P.O. box, and that is because we don't expect that your physical records are being kept at the post office. So we need that actual physical location. And once again, regarding medical records, we need a phone number in order to contact if need be. I'm going to finish it off by answering the last few questions on the disclosure form. Once you have gone through, entered all of the information, and reviewed and answered all of the questions, you can hit save. And now you'll notice that under provider self-disclosure, we have a status of completed. We have satisfied that requirement and have entered in our self-disclosure form. You'll also notice that the Create New button for our self-disclosure is grayed out because you can only have one self-disclosure. I need to do the same thing and action each one of these, even if I don't have a specific disclosing entity to report in the category. I still have to action the category in order to be able to move forward. So let's start with subcontractor. I'm going to hit Create New on the line item, and that's going to bring me up a subcontractor disclosure form. And at the top of the disclosure form is going to be a description for you to be able to review to determine if you've got any disclosing entities to report in this category. So for instance, a subcontractor is defined as having business transactions with the provider in the last 12 months that exceeds $25,000. So if you have a disclosing entity, an individual or a corporation that meets that criteria, you will want to disclose that information here by filling out the form. If you do not, on the very first question, you would want to hit no, and all of that other information goes away, and you can hit save. And now you have just met the requirement for the subcontractor disclosure form. You're saying you don't have any. I'm going to do the same for ownership and controlling interest. I'm going to hit Create New. And this is going to bring me up an ownership and controlling interest form. And just like our subcontractor form, at the top, you're going to want to review the information to see if you've got a disclosing entity that meets the criteria. I do today, so I'm going to enter in an individual that owns 50% interest in my facility. So I'll need to enter in their details, including their name, their social security number, and their birth date. Under that, I need to enter in their address. I'll accept those changes by clicking on the line item. And I will be required to enter in an email address for this individual. So this is one of the few places within the application that we're going to ask that the email address is actually required. You do have to enter in an email address for a disclosing entity within this category. We're going to ask you for the effective date of this disclosing entity, and then you'll notice that it defaults the end date for you to what we call the end of time at 12/31/9999. That's because we don't anticipate that you have a stop date or an end date for this individual, but if you do, by all means, you can take that out and put an end date in there. And then just like the provider self-disclosure, you need to answer questions regarding this individual. So you'll go through, answer the questions. They're all defaulted to yes. If the answer is yes, there's windows here that you're going to need to fill out to give more information about that yes answer. But if the answer is no, that field is going to go away and you can continue on to the next question. So just go through each one of these one by one and answer appropriately. And when you get to the end, you can hit save. And now I've successfully entered in my ownership disclosing entity. And now I have a completed. You'll notice too that I still have the option to hit create new again. And that's because in each one of these other disclosing entity fields, subcontractor through business transaction, you could have multiple disclosing entities within that category. You could have multiple owners, multiple people who have controlling interest, multiple managing employees. So if they meet the criteria, you just want to enter them in one by one. So if I had another owner to enter here, I would just hit create new again and enter in another form. I'm going to go on to managing employees. And again, I'm going to review the top information to see if I've got any disclosing entities that meet this criteria. If I do, I'm going to leave my first question as yes and enter in all of the information. If my answer is no, all of that goes away and I can hit save. And lastly, we're going to do the same for business transaction. Same thing, I'm going to review the information at the top. I'm going to answer the first question. Yes, I fill out all the information. No, I can continue on. So now all of my statuses are completed. I am ready to save and continue and move on with the application. I do want to note though, however, if you have to go back and look at the disclosure form or forms that you have completed, you have the option to do so. Maybe somebody else needs to review the application. Maybe they need to look at the disclosure form before you submit it. All you need to do in order to access the forms that you've completed is click anywhere on the line item that you want to see the form. So we entered in a form for ownership and control interest. So anywhere here in this line item, if I click, it's going to bring up the form that I filled out. And if I had filled out multiple forms, I will see them all listed there. So they'll all be together, one right after the other. I only had one, so it's right here. Here's my disclosure form for Rebecca. And if I needed to edit it and look at it, I can just simply click the edit button. It'll bring up the form as I filled it out and I can make changes if need be. Once you have reviewed all the information and are ready to proceed, you can hit save to continue. The next page of the application is background check. And I do want to note this is one of the pages of the application that if you are a limited risk provider, you are not going to see this page. So don't be worried if you don't see it. It just means it doesn't apply to you. But if you are moderate, high risk provider, you're going to see this. High risk, you are definitely going to see this page, and it's going to list anybody that is meets the criteria in order to have to submit fingerprints for enrollment. So you'll notice here that I do have somebody listed, and this is my disclosing entity, the one that I filled out for my ownership disclosure form. And this person, because I'm a high risk provider type, will be required to submit fingerprints in order for the enrollment to be able to continue. Now, if I've submitted fingerprints to Medicare or a different Medicaid agency within the last 5 years, I can check this box. and that will be noted on the application. If not, if I don't check that box, you are required within 30 days to submit those fingerprints after you have submitted your application. So you can still submit your application, but you are going to need to submit fingerprints, and you will get a letter with the information on how to do that. I'm going to leave this unchecked for now, and I'm going to hit save and continue. We've made it to the attachments page, and this page, regardless if you're limited risk or moderate or high risk, everybody will have this page. The only difference is that my attachments that you see here may be different than the attachments that you are seeing. It just depends on your specific situation. However, the process to action these is the same, so we're going to go through that process today. So you'll notice here my provider type and specialty are listed at the top. The top field is letting me know what is required. So I am required to submit a W-9 form, my malpractice information, DME surety bond, and a voided check because I had noted that I wanted to do EFT. So those things are what needs to be submitted with my application in order to make my application complete. You'll see that the requirement met right now says no, and we need them all to say yes in order to continue. So to action them, I'm going to go down to the bottom where it says attachment details, and I'm going to first hit create new. I do have to do each one of these individually, so I'm going to start with my IRS W-9 form. And the first thing that I need to note is how am I going to get these documents to this application? There's a few different ways that you have to do that, and as I've said throughout the entire application, the way that I'm going to recommend is that you choose electronic only and upload them directly to your application. The reason for this is if you add them directly onto your application right now, once you submit your application, it goes directly through the screening service and starts in a queue for a Gainwell representative to review. If you choose to upload or send your documents by mail, email, or fax, not only is there a timer on getting those to us, but your application, when you submit it, is in a holding pattern. It's waiting for those attachments. It won't go any further until we have received them. And if we do not receive them within the required time, your application will be locked up and you will have to start over. So it is the best method if you can to submit them to us electronically, but you do have the choice. So if you do choose by mail, email, or fax, I'll show you the cover sheet that you would need to send with those at the end of the application. But for today, we're going to choose electronic only. And then I need to select my attachment type. So my attachment type, I'm going to choose from a drop-down, has to match these attachment types over here. So as noted, I'm going to start with my IRS W-9. I'm going to do a predictive search here and just type in IRS. And then I'm going to select the files by clicking the Select Files button, navigating to my computer of where my document is. And just that easy, the document has been uploaded and I can hit Save. Now I have an entry down here for my IRS W-9 that I submitted electronically, and here's the file. At the top, the requirement for my IRS W-9 form is now yes. So I'm going to do the same thing for my proof of professional liability insurance. I'm going to hit Create New on the attachment details. I'm going to select my transmission method, which today is electronic. Go to my attachment type, and this time find proof of professional liability insurance. Select my file. And save. I'll move on to my DME surety bond. I'm going to hit Create New. My transmission method is electronic. My attachment type is DME surety bond. And I'm going to navigate to my computer to find it. And save. So I have one more, which is the copy of a voided check. And as I'm going through this, you can see that if you do the enrollment pre-checklist at the beginning and have the information ready to go that you're going to need, it goes by very quickly. You can see how quickly I have been able to upload these documents because I knew what I was going to need, so I had them ready to go on my computer, and it takes no time at all. So now I've got all 4 of my attachments here, and my requirements have all been met and say yes. I just want to note though, requirement met yes does not mean you uploaded your document. That just means you told us how you're going to get your document to us. So if you chose down here that your transmission method is mail, email, or fax, it's still going to say yes up here. You just need to make sure that you send those documents in right away after you submit your application. Once the requirements are all yes, you are ready. You can hit save and continue. Next up is the fees page, and all facility applications are going to see this page. You're going to want to read over the information regarding an application fee. Up top, it tells you who qualifies for a fee, what the fee is, and where to send the check for the fee. At this time, a check is the only way to submit for the fee. We do not accept online payments for this as of right now. In order to determine whether or not you qualify for a fee, you're going to answer 4 different questions. And these 4 questions at the bottom then are going to result in whether or not you need to pay the fee or don't need to pay the fee. So the first question is the service location enrolled in Medicare? Now we've already determined that we are. You saw me enter in my Medicare information. For purposes as of right now, to show you, I'm going to hit no, just to show you what it looks like when I say no. It's also going to ask you if you've paid an application fee to another state's Medicaid program for the service location. So for this specific service location, are you enrolled in another state's Medicaid program and did you pay a fee to that state Medicaid program? We're going to say no. Have you received a waiver of the application fee from Medicare or another state's Medicaid program because of financial hardship? I'm going to say no today. And lastly, are you requesting a waiver of the application fee because of financial hardship? I'm going to say no. Now you'll notice I said no to all of these and it populated that I owe the fee of $599. Now, again, I'm enrolled in Medicare. You saw me enter in my Medicare information. If I flip this to yes, you're going to see that no fee is due. And that's because if you've paid the fee to Medicare or another state Medicaid program, we are not going to require an additional fee. So just answer each question appropriately, and at the bottom of the page, it will tell you whether or not a fee is due. And again, if a fee is due, at the top of the page, it's going to tell you where to send that check to. Once you are ready, you can hit save to continue. We have now made it to the last page of our application, which is the agreement submit page. You're going to want to look over the information at the top of the page. Under the terms of agreement, you'll notice that we've pulled over some information from earlier on in the application. It's always a good practice to review the information, make sure everything looks okay, because now would be the time to go update it if it's wrong. Some provider types have special provisions, and so we ask that you please visit this blue hyperlink before proceeding to see if one of your provider types is included. If it's not included, you can simply navigate back here and proceed, but if it is, you're going to want to review that information as those are special terms regarding your provider type. Once you're ready, you can hit the proceed button. Directly under that is going to be our general provider agreement, and you're going to want to read over this information very carefully. You do have the option if you hover over the top of the page. I'm in Internet Explorer today, so your different browser, you may see it displaying a little bit differently, but you do have the option to save or to print this document if you want to keep it for your records. But most importantly, please make sure to review the information carefully as these are the terms that you are agreeing to with Vermont Medicaid. Once you are ready and accept the terms, you want to check the box for I accept, and then a blue window is going to pop up and you're going to need to confirm. Directly under that, we're going to ask you for some details for a portal registration. In the event that your application is approved, an email is going to be sent out to this person as indicated, sending them an invitation code in order to register for the provider portal in order to maintain this enrollment information. So we want to know who has the authority to get direct link to your information for this enrollment to maintain it, to make changes, make updates, and revalidate. So you want to enter in all of the information as required. And you want to be careful and make sure that you really are keying the information correctly, because whoever gets this invitation code, as noted here, will need to validate the information that was entered into this section when registering that invitation code. Then lastly, you're going to need to sign your application. You're going to electronically sign it by clicking the I accept and then typing in your name. If there's any more information via comments that you want to give to Gainwell Technologies or the state of Vermont, you can enter some information here. If you are not ready to submit your application at this time, again, maybe you need to get more information from somebody or somebody else needs to review the application before you submit it, you have the option to finish it later. There is a finish later button. If you click that, it will leave the application, but it will save all of the information up until right now. You do have 30 days to submit your application. So within those 30 days, you can resume it, you can start it again, and you can submit it. If more than 30 days elapse, then it will be expired and you will have to start over. But if you are ready to submit your application, you can enter in a verification email. So this email, you will hit the request verification code. I'm going to do that right now. And that's going to send my email address a code in order to be able to submit my application. And it will let you know that the code is going to expire after 10 minutes. So if 10 minutes go by, maybe something happens and you weren't able to get to it, you're just going to need to leave the application, resume it, come back into it, and then request another verification code. So I'm going to go get my verification code. Okay, so my code I'm going to paste right into the verification code box. So I copied it right off of the email and pasted it directly into that box. It does need to look exactly the way that it looks in your email. So all of my letters were capitalized, which means they all have to be capitalized here. Easiest way is to copy and paste. Once you've entered in the verification code, you are now ready to submit your application. You can hit the submit button that's on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And then an alert's going to come up just to confirm you are actually trying to submit the application. I'm going to check yes. And you should see a page just like this one that says that your submission was successful. It's going to give you your tracking number again here in bold. We also have some contact information for the provider enrollment team. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to email or call them. If you chose mail, email, or fax for your attachment type, that means that right now, after you've submitted your application is in a holding period and you need to get those documents to us as soon as possible. You're going to access this cover sheet. This cover sheet gives us all of the information we need once you submit it with those documents in order to determine which application we should upload those documents to. That saves time and confusion, so make sure that you send the cover sheet with you. Couple last things before we close up for today. If you needed to check the enrollment status of your application, you can do so by clicking the menu button in the top left-hand corner, hover over provider enrollment, and click on the enrollment status button. You will need your application tracking number and the password you used to register your application in order to check the status. If you did not submit your application and you need to go back and resume your application, right above that is the resume revalidate enrollment. You would want to click on that. Again, use your application tracking number and the password you used to register your application, and it will bring you right back to where you left off. Thank you so much for visiting this training video today. I hope you have a wonderful day.